Thank you very much for this nice invitation and this very kind introduction of yours. I'm very happy and honored to be here. And let me see if I'm sharing the right screen
Okay.
now.
Oh,
Okay, excellent. You are seeing just one 4 by 3 slide. I usually have this presentation in 4 by 3. I hope you don't mind. And yes, the present. So Katerina asked me to present a presentation about delivering multimedia presentations, and this is something that I'm used to giving with my colleagues Daniel Gonçalves and also Manuel João. And the important thing about public presentations is that they are relevant. They establish your public image, whether you are doing them in more or less formal settings or in academic presentations, such as your dissertation defense or classes, or in business environments, wherever they are casual or more formal. And what do people do? They usually get nervous and they prepare something that's totally unreadable because everything has to be crammed inside every slide. My main goal here is to prevent you from doing this kind of stuff. Resist death by PowerPoint and avoid getting your audience bored and totally out of sync with the topic because uh, killer presentations can come in very many flavors, and if people lose attention they also may lose the information that you are so desperately trying to convey, and you should avoid at all costs. How do you then deliver a good presentation? Well, first you start by preparing your presentation. So the topic is, what are you going to talk about? What are you presenting? Are you presenting a product? Are you presenting an idea? Are you presenting your research results? Are you presenting your startup financial results? Are you telling a history? Or are you wanting to provide a list of recommendations, such as the 7 capital sins of badly prepared public talks? You should at all costs avoid confusing the audience. If it's not clear in your head, it will not be clear to them. And you should avoid digressions. If you are going to present a product, you should avoid implementation details. That goes twice for programming products. You should avoid digressions. If you are going to present things to financial experts, you should stay away from technical details, especially your boss. Are you presenting a programming language? Then maybe the integrated development environment is not relevant, and people care more about the syntax and the power of programming language. But you should reflect on the target audience. Who are they? Are they colleagues? Are they friends? Are you presenting to your boss, convincing them to get you a raise? She might be influenced by the quality of your presentation. Or are you talking to the general public? Why is this important? You should have a pretty good idea of what your audience does know in advance. Are you talking to experts in the subject matter? Then introductions of basic topics are of no consequence. Do they have a passing knowledge? Or is it something new to them? This is important to establish the ground level of what you are going to talk about. If they are experts, you should avoid preaching to the choir, as we say in Catholic countries, literally telling people things that they already know by heart. The auditorium, the place details are also important. You should beware of the type and size of room, what kind of illumination, and if there are slides with video in them, you should probably also wary of whether or there is or not audio support. And things like the internet connection may be important, but let me give you a practical piece of advice. Avoid at all costs live demonstrations. If the internet connection fails, you'll have to tell a lot of jokes to keep the audience entertained instead of explaining to you how your marvelous idea works. Videos are a fail-safe device. So, once you've established this and you know where to whom you're going to present your audience, what your audience, who your audience will be, what you're going to present, and how you're going to present it, you should go about planning your presentation proper. You always have to remember that the presentation is a story. No matter what you are going to tell people about, you're going to tell a story, and there should be some kind of logic flow to your ideas. You want to attract their attention. Well, not necessarily a bullfight, but conflict is a way of engaging people. We'll see how we go about providing conflict and entertaining people and getting their attention. Some ways of doing a presentation. One of my favorites, but not the only one, is the hero's journey. As Aristotle said, there are 3 steps to a successful presentation in the art of rhetoric, a nice Greek word that means the art of persuasion. And you usually start by saying people what you're about to say to them, and then you tell it, and then you finish by telling them what you've told them. So, for the hero's journey, in the beginning you have to lay down the setting and the conflict and explain to people what your presentation will give them. Okay? If you are trying to sell an idea, the call to adventure is probably an important step here. You must go forward and achieve your goals. In the middle, you tell the journey as if it were, say, the Lord of the Rings, where you have fight all kinds of monsters and you want to get to the evil boss and defeat them in the end. And in the end, you resolve the conflict and you explain how people are changed by your presentation. So suppose you want to tell people about space exploration, for lack of a better topic. Here we are in the 21st century. The world is going to hell, population increase, all eggs are in one basket, and the result will be likely Armageddon. So the call to adventure would be, we must explore space, spread out to the stars. And the middle, the presentation, you have to explain how this is going to happen. We must continue manned exploration. We haven't been to the moon in 50 years. Of course, this has costs. Many people ask, is it worth to spend so much money? Of course, we can get economic returns. Imagine if we get a full asteroid composed of iridium. We can make a lot of money to pay for those costs. And that's one aspect of the conflict. Why not solve the problems here first? Well, there will be technical difficulties, but there are proposals to overcome them. We can get to Mars via solar sails, putting nuclear weapons to good use by propelling, say, a space shuttle to Mars, etc., etc. And in the end, we can say something like that. We can start now. Private investors are key. We see that SpaceX is doing fine. Perhaps even Virgin Galactic will do what NASA didn't. SpaceX is only accomplishing some of that. Mission to Mars in 30 years is achievable, and we will ensure a future for our children. Okay, so see, this is an example of a presentation that would try to sell the idea of space exploration to the audience. You can sell your dissertation. You can sell your product. So how and where do you start? The big idea. You start here. You must articulate your point of view. You need to convey what's at stake and state what you want to convince the audience as a complete sentence. So suppose you want to say the big idea is talk to people about space exploration or how using our software would be great. Don't do this. Articulate your big idea as a complete sentence. We must restart the exploration of space because there lies the future of Earth when population will grow even further and conflicts here on Earth increase. That part was just added by myself. The second idea would be, okay, using our new software will allow you to establish better contact with your clients and increase your profit margin by 2%. So here's 2 examples. Let's develop the space exploration further. So my point of view would be that space exploration is important and we should continue to do it. What's at stake? If we don't do it, we'll run out of room, resources will dwindle, and we'll all die. So here is an example of how to articulate your big idea. How do you get from your big idea to ideas? Well, first you start like doing a brainstorm. You collect old ideas, you create new ideas, you throw everything and the proverbial kitchen sink at the problem. Uh, I suggest using post-it notes because they are a nice way to organize. You can write it on the wall if your wall is the washable sink, and your crayons are also the kind that can be washed away. How do you structure a great presentation? That's important here. Usually, the way to convince your audience lies on three important things. We tend to think that as universitarians or academicians, just facts will sway your audience. That could not be further from the truth. Usually, great presentations stand on three legs: ethical appeal, which is the credibility of yourself, the ideas that you are proposing, the nobleness of them, the character. And the other one is emotional appeal, where you stir the imagination of the audience and you appeal to their emotions. And of course, we have the third, which is evidence, facts, and figures that build up the logical appeal. So for space explorations, you could say, well, a responsible citizen must help. That would be the ethical appeal. You appeal people to the goodness of your ethics. The emotional appeal say, well, if that doesn't happen, people will buy that thousands or millions. And the logical appeal would be based on facts like population has increased 200% in the last 15 years, and it has not slowed down perceptibly. So here are three examples of angles that you could exploit in your presentation. One thing that people tend to overlook is that emotion is important. And if you use personal stories, as I told you, we can use that to bond to our audience. You can tell personal stories about the project. I won't go at length about this. But if you are going to present a story about a software project, you can say, well, some years ago, I was given about a project about potatoes, not in this very room, but somewhere on Mars. And at the time, we only had 1 week to do it and no tablet PC, so it was hard. But even when the server broke in the night before the deadline, luckily we have prepared and had a backup. This is science fiction, by the way. Everything turned out well. And the same can happen here. Although there is much work to do before we get to Mars, if we draft the schedule and prepare for contingencies, we'll be there in no time. And okay, so I have thrown at you a lot of ideas, and not all will support your claim or what you want to present. Not all will make sense. You need to filter and kill the bad ones and keep up the good ones. So suppose you have a bunch of ideas on a better quality of life, increase in population, sense of adventure, chemical propulsion is too slow, some asteroids are 50% gold, to boldly go where no one has gone before, it is dangerous. This is the result of maybe either a bad night's sleep or an overly active brainstorm. Ad hoc and related ideas will not work. You should cluster them into messages. And that's one idea here. You organize this into clusters. So, says the green cluster is about population growth and scarcity of resources. The yellow cluster is about advanced propulsion techniques. The blue cluster is about economic opportunities. And the rose cluster is about motivational stuff. We can do it. And then you have the ethical appeal. People will line up for doing this, and new materials will make it possible. That's the bottom cluster. So here you have an idea. Now the problem is, how do you organize these clusters? Remember, you need to establish some kind of structure in your presentation. And I told you about the hero's journey, but you can organize your presentation in many ways. You can organize the presentation about the time progression of events. You could talk about manned space flight and from Tsiolkovsky to the moon. You could talk about sequential processes or step-by-step locations, another organization, or climatic, which was one of my favorite, from the least important to the most important. Or you can discuss problem solution. This situation is bad, we can solve it thus and this way. Or you can compare and contrast different approaches. Notice that there is no pre-established structure. You can have things like cause and effect. If you do this, that will happen. If you do this instead, it all will be great. Or you can use advantages, disadvantages for each approach. All of these structure establishing things. By the way, don't worry too much. I will provide via Catherine a slide share entry where you can visit these slides at your discretion later. So you should order the messages for impact. How will you present in an articulate way your ideas? So you can have things like population growth and scarcity, economic opportunities, advanced propulsion techniques, ethical appeal. People will want to line up for this. New materials make things possible and pay for it, and we can do it. This is a bit disorganized. Maybe not this. There are huge problems, and although people will hunt to help, we will need advanced propulsion, a better economy, and new materials. We are screwed. Okay, this will not work. Perhaps better. There are huge problems, and we need new propulsion and materials, which is expensive, but there are new resources out there, and this thing will pay for itself. People will be eager to participate. Yes, we can. Sounds better. And certainly not this. Economic opportunities, advanced propulsion, people line up for this. We can do it, new materials. You need to make sense. You need to come to a conclusion. You need to structure your ideas. And so there are good ways to deliver a presentation, and you have to make sure that you want to get people to the right state of mind at the end of your presentation. You need to create contrasts and balance. Contrasts both in planning and delivery. Otherwise, the audience will be bored to death. Alternate between analytical ideas and emotional ones. Analytical are the ones we are used to: diagrams, data, graphs, evidence, system, and process. But that's, if you are too analytical, that will be a boring presentation. If you, on the other hand, develop too emotional presentation based on stories, shocking statements, jokes, surprise elements, cliffhangers, suspended reveals, props, dramatization, it might be too much of an emotional roller coaster. So one important thing to deliver a good presentation is to have kind of a balance between both the analytical and the emotional, and alternate between those so that you can deliver a good message. One key idea is to develop and create memorable moments, things that the audience will remember long after they forgot about the main topic of your presentation. This is an example from a cave in Argentina where people painted their hands thousands of years ago, and that's why I picked it. One guy very particularly fond of was Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs had a fantastic way of delivering presentations. I picked two moments from him. Many years ago, Steve Jobs presented the MacBook to an audience in those, one other thing, moments that he was so fond of to deliver during his presentations. By the way, Steve Jobs was famous for spending weeks, like 3 weeks in advance, preparing for that 1 hour and a half that he would entertain people. And he would try to come up with this, you know what he has in his hand? On the right hand, he has the MacBook. And on the other hand, he has a manila folder, which is an envelope that people use to exchange messages in the office. And he took the MacBook out of the manila folder just to show how thin it was and how great it was. Another memorable moment, remember the iPod Nano? He just made the big thing. Notice how the camera was focusing on his right hand. You know that small pocket that is in everybody's jeans? It used to be the place where miners would keep their change, and that's why Levi Strauss put it there, and now all pair of jeans comes with one of those. And in the one other thing moment, he takes the iPod Nano out of his pocket and he says to the audience, now I know why this little pocket is for. So, and people remember about that. That's why I picked this still image. Repeatable sound bites. So for those of you who do not remember, maybe you remember the guy who's here? This guy. His name is John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He was a president of the United States. And these two guys are Willy Brandt, former German chancellor, who was by then the president of the Social Democratic Party, and Konrad Adenauer, the first German chancellor of after World War II. And the Russians had imposed a blockade on Berlin, which was in the middle of East Germany, and the Americans organized a airlift to get medicaments and food supplies to Berlin. And Kennedy flew personally to Berlin, and this is an excerpt of the speech he gave to the Berliner citizen. Ich bin ein Berliner, which translated to English reads like, I am a jelly donut. No, not really. It's more, Berliner is a citizen of Berlin. And yes, it's also the name of a jelly donut, a very popular sweet, also here in Lisbon, where we call it a bolet Berlin. And what he wanted to tell is, I am one of you. I'm here with you. So, and everybody remembers Kennedy's one-liners like soldier ask not what you can do for what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Or we chose to go to the moon not because it is easy but because it is difficult, and we'll be there by the end of the decade. And he was really good at these one-liners. Other things that will stay in the memory of the audience, evocative visuals, nice, appealing photographs, emotive storytelling. Okay, this guy here, maybe Katarina can tell you about him. His name was Hans Rosling, and he was a famous Swedish statistician that wrote a fantastic book called Factfulness, that I recommend to all of you. It was one of my favorite readings that explained to me the traps and pitfalls of relying on the wrong kind of data or making wrong assumptions about the data you have. And Hans Rosling would deliver shocking statistics to people. Go and see his TED Talk on amazing statistics and shocking statistics. It's more than 10 years old. He died, I think, in 2010. But he was a fantastic presenter. If you want to do captivating presentations, study Hans Rosling techniques. He had it all. Okay, so how do you craft slides? I've explained to you the basic attention-getting techniques. Now let me explain to you the mechanics of preparing captivating slides. The most important thing that you should remember is one idea per slide. This is very important. I'll let it sink in. People tend to think that a lot of text is a good idea, and not. And I'll explain to you why. Because if you are paying attention to me, you cannot read what's on the slides. And if you want to read what's on the slides, you cannot pay attention to what I'm saying. And why is this? Because psychology tells us, human neurophysiology tells us, that while there are separate channels for reading printed texts and hearing spoken speech. There is only one area of the brain that specializes in natural language processing. And guess what? Both printed texts and spoken language go through that same area of the brain. So your poor brain has to choose between listening to you or reading the slides. Do not overextend the audience. Have mercy on them. Okay? Too much text in your slides will kill the presentation. So think about what you are doing. Think about how best to transmit your image and do sketches. Use storyboards, brainstorm, choose a nice topic, and deliver winning stuff. Let me show you how you can do a wrong presentation and which consultants will tell you that's the best way to present ideas. Put lots of text on the slide, make a distracting background, use bullets, use those fancy reflective backgrounds, and just always mask your image. So you want to say that your product called Excel has managed to achieve all the goals proposed in the original requirements document, including orange juice it does in 16 seconds, toast it does in 45 seconds, cakes take 10 minutes, but it still doesn't do salads. Boring slide, right? Do not do this stuff. Let me show you better ways of accomplish this. You can say that Excel is a fantastic product that exceeds or meets all specifications, does orange juice in 16 seconds, can do toast in 45 seconds, can do cakes in 10 minutes, but alas, no salads. See, you presented the same ideas, you have less text, you can entertain the audience, you present strong visuals, you deliver the same message, and you do not do boring presentations. How do you know whether you're doing the right stories? Well, one of my favorite things is a slide sorter in PowerPoint. I'm sure that all presentation devices have other things. Reviewing your presentation in slide sorter helps you see whether the ideas make sense and if there is a chain of reasoning from one point of your presentation to the other, and can help you identify missing bits in the story. You should review everything. Is there information lacking? By the way, this is not one of my best slides. There must be a plot thread. Are things properly structured? Are you repeating yourselves? Is the presentation convincing? But more important than that, is this the story that you would naturally tell if you had no slides? That's the important part. Okay, slide creation basics. We are getting there. One key point about presentations is that you are the presentation, not the slides. If the slides were enough, then ask yourself, would a trained monkey do an equal good job as myself? You know, a trained monkey is the one that knows how to press next slide key. And if the audience could read the slides by themselves, then you are not doing anything there. Will your boss give you a $500 per month raise if you are as good as a trained monkey in delivering your presentations? Remember, you are the presentation. The slides are not it. The slides are things, devices to increase the emotional impact of what you're going to do. They complement what you are saying. They are not what you're saying. So the deadliest sin for you is reading from the slides. And that's a deadly sin by several reasons. Takes away your attention from the audience. They wonder what you're doing there if they could read the slides themselves. And makes your presentation boring. As I told you, the slide's purpose is emotion, reinforcing your ideas. See, the last part of my presentation or the previous slides could have been like this and not like that. Okay? This is the text that I would say. I could doing a boring, bullety thing like this. You know what? There was a space shuttle accident many years ago in 2003, Colombia. And people, after the astronaut crew was dead, NASA conducted a public inquiry and asked how come nobody had realized that big chunks of ice during the liftoff could make damage, significant damage to the fuselage and crash the vehicle upon re-entry. Apparently people had done so, but the point was buried in the 27th line of a slide filled with bullet points that missed everybody's attention, and we know the result. So the first step is to choose a template, choose a nice color scheme. By the way, the color wheel that you see a representation here was invented by Sir Isaac Newton many centuries ago. Great idea for picking color schemes. You can use it. This is a complementary scheme. That's what I've been using in my slides. Shades of green for some parts of the presentation, shades of red for others. And in general, you can pick any of these combinations of colors. You can pick a 4-color scheme using 4 90 degrees separated colors from here and correct this to a tint. Do not overuse colors in your presentation. Beware the World Wide Web, I told you, and strive for simplicity. Remember, 1 idea per slide. Why is this good? Well, images will help us remember what to say. Don't use slide transitions. Never, ever, almost never. Actually, things like Prezi will overdo it. You actually, I think I used 4 or 5 slides with animations in my life. They help convey meaning and not because they are there to be used. Just because PowerPoint or Prezi or some other stuff has some nifty animations and transitions because they are cool, it's certainly not the way to go. Overdoing on cool can kill your presentation, same way as bullets. Remember what I told you about Colombia. Bullets kill people, both the real bullets and the slide bullets. Don't use bullets. Okay, so let me give you another example of a wrong presentation. Hey, see, this one is a real doozy. It has one of those stupid distracting backgrounds just because they are there. It has a low contrast font. It has a bullet. And it says something like, we made a market study to verify if the XAMI system is being well accepted. And we saw that the usage rate among elder people is of 83%. And there is this kind of thing of a grumpy old man. And, oh well. Okay, let's see better ways of doing this. You can say everything that you were saying and just so little text. And remember, you are the presentation. You could say, we have conducted a user study of our fantastic XAMI system, and we found out that elders prefer to use it by an 83% margin. Why so much text? We can just say, we did the market study to verify the acceptance of our Excellentis system, and we noticed that the acceptance rate among elders was 83%. Younger people do not like it as much. Only 40% expressed a positive opinion. Everybody likes it. Nobody complained too much. And you can say this, and people will remember the 83% and the elder person. And of course, you can do it in different ways. Say, who do say that only young, attractive women make a good slides? You can say 83% of elders like XAMI. People's faces tend to make captivating slides. And by the way, you can even make great presentations without figures. Just put the figures there, the main figures. So, many of these ideas come from a thing called presentation Zen. Well, Zen is not, you know, the Japanese principle of simplicity. It's not exactly only images, but almost. So 1 idea per slide, minimalistic content, and striking visuals. Can be texts. Okay? presentation Zen is this. Strive for minimalism. Okay, how do you go about getting good images from your presentation? Well, you can remember one thing. You hear something, and 3 days later you remember like 10% of it, but see something, and 3 days later you remember 65% of it. There are user studies showing this. Use high quality images. Okay, no clip art unless it's very high quality clip art. Bad clip art conveys the low quality message. Use good images. Use beautiful images. Well, this is no longer the 16th century. So suppose you wanted to say that the wheat crop in 2006 was 300 tons. Less texts, better images, captivate the audience. The wheat crop in 2006 was 300 tons. You can even surprise the audience by came up with flying pigs. They'll use to get to elicit reaction from the audience. If you're going to say the system is fast, well, maybe not the best image to show a snail pace here, unless you're going to talk about the competition. That's good then. Oh, their system is so fast. Fantastic. Use people. Use drama. Make the images more memorable, appealing to emotion. And importantly, full bleed has the most impact. Compare this when you want to say that wind-powered yachts are the clean and relaxing way to travel. This is a little bit better, but there's still some wasted space around, and you can, for sure, use the full screen as much as you can do. So this is a good idea, and you can even be a little creative about the text. If you want to focus on the people, then you can crop high-resolution photos when necessary. Running is good. I believe some of you in the audience will believe me. Do not use symmetry. Asymmetric brings more impact. 65 million years ago, dinosaurs ruled. That gives you more impact. And let me give you a bunch of don'ts about image quality or lack thereof. So by now you know what's wrong about this image. Small pictures are bad. And don't paste images randomly on a slide. That's also one bad thing about small images. And the image is not quite full screen. Why are you wasting your space? And what's wrong about this one? Pixelated stuff. Bad quality images give exactly the wrong image about your presentation. Do not be lazy. There are plenty of good pictures. You don't need to use watermark stuff. Pixelated images, again, lazy people get these lazy images. Do not use distorted image. And remember, no bad clip art. What's wrong about this image? Why is it not the best one? Remember what I told you about images. They should complement what you're saying. A generic thumbs up, thumbs down sign does not call people's attention. It has nothing to do with speeding accidents. Okay, I'm almost nearing the end of my presentation. Let me give you some advices about type. Design for the last row. At least 28 points. Make the text readable. If you cannot read the text in slide sorter, PowerPoint slide sorter, then the type is too small. Strive for simplicity. Avoid visual pollution. Here's a bad example. Here's a better example. Still too much texts. And then remember, you can say everything that you was on the previous slide with less visual pollution. Use sans serif type because it improves the readability on your screen. And if you are still keen on using too much texts, shift it to the handouts. Here's an example. You can put the text on the handouts and let the audience focus on what you're saying. How many slides in a presentation? Well, for traditional slides, you can have one every 2 to 5 minutes. For good slides, I'm having 200 in this presentation, and they're okay, too much. Remember, for time management, each slide has one idea only. You can talk more or less, and you can adapt to the time that's left. Where do you get the content? Of course, from the internet. Okay, it's copyrighted, it costs money, and there is a lot of paid content, but you can also use lots of sites that give you Creative Commons resources. Morgfile, Flickr as a Creative Commons pool, Stock.exchange. My favorite recently is Getty Images. Believe it or not, they have free images, and unsplash.com is, I took a couple of pictures and images for this presentation from Unsplash. Of course, you have also PodSafe Music Network and 1001 fonts that give you free stuff. Last but not the least, delivery. What are the 3 key things in delivery? Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Manage your time. How do you get your time under control? Rehearse more. But be careful. Do not rehearse too much. It has to be spontaneous, and there's got to be flexibility. One important thing is not being at a loss for words. Well, one thing difficult to say over Zoom is to keep eye contact with your audience. I know this is a difficult one, but remember this, you came here for them and they are there for you. Look at them, don't look at your slides. If you don't know where to put your hands, you can always clasp them together and make sure that they are busy. Do not turn your back on the audience. They are there for you and you're there for them. Good posture is essential. And keep some flexibility. Some general word of advice. Like a fine meal, a good presentation requires good ingredients, excellent preparation, exquisite timing, and good cooking. If you prepare and mix the right ingredients and cook them well, you'll have a bright future ahead of you. Thank you so much. So if you want to know some more about your techniques for great presentations, I would recommend Presentation Zen Design, and The Naked Presenter by a guy called Gar Reynolds. He is from New Riders, and you can find the book anywhere, and it's excellent. Even The Naked Presenter tells you how to give great presentations without slides. Nancy Duarte from O'Reilly Books has a thing called Slideology, and there are a bunch of internet resources that you can use. I've used a lot of material from Flickr, Stock Exchange, and that I want to attribute here. And this whole presentation is available on the Creative Commons license, and I'm ready to take some questions if you are still with me. For your question, it's people think that you need to put lots of ideas in a graph. Simplicity is probably everything. You can choose simple color schemes. I think I have here another present. I had a gazillion ideas about simplicity in color schemes that can help you develop good visuals. Maybe I'll go quickly over a couple of slides that illustrate my point. Where is it? Here. Am I sharing my screen again, right? It can be creative. Light on light, light on medium, light on dark. Colors can be used in many creative ways. So the key message I have to deliver, your question is an excellent question. Avoid visual pollution at all costs. Make your graph simple as possible. So notice that I have no horizontal lines here, no XY coordinates, no extraneous text. No 3D graphics, please. Here. Avoid it. Here's an example of a simple monochromatic scheme. Use the color wheel. And you can use an analogous scheme where you have green and shades of brown that go well together. Or you can have a complementary scheme from the color graph, or an achromatic plus one. So simplicity. Make your visual analytics tools as simple and avoid visual pollution on the screen because it distracts your audience and remember, visual analytics is only as good as it helps you convey a message. If it obscures the message, then it's as productive as a shot in the foot or shooting your own self's foot. So there is a lot about I stole these slides from my colleague Daniel Gonçalves, who teaches a course on visualization, information visualization. But the key message is the same one as in Zen: simplicity. Avoid visual pollution. Strive for good color schemes. Make sure and how you can go for good color schemes. Use the color wheel. There's a site called colorwheel.com, if I'm not mistaken, where you can rehearse your color combinations. So